Who are wisdom practitioners?
So let's pivot now to wisdom practitioners. Who are wisdom practitioners? First, they're respected and trusted members and representatives of a community. They intuitively identify, deploy, and support solutions grounded in the communities that they serve. They are also the strategists and binding agents for the cultivation of collective works and solidarity within a community. So, without knowing it, these are activists that are doing crazy types of works to bring people together to advance a common cause. And to do that, these individuals bring an immense amount of trust that transverses multiple kinship networks to bring people into a room to have a conversation, to envision what the possibilities are, and to strategize the steps to get to those possibilities, turning those radical possibilities into radical promises, right? Uh, Traits of a wisdom practitioner, therefore, are being proximate to the community that they serve. So, any benefits of change making that's being prescribed for that community, they are direct beneficiaries of those strategies that's being deployed upon that community, which is why it's important to have proximate leaders engaged in defining what those strategies are if they're going to have any efficacy within those communities. Wisdom practitioners are also advocates. They are acutely active, vocal, and solution focused. Again, it's another reason why they should be in a room when there are strategies being designed. So if you're a social worker or if you're a human service agency, a social justice advocate, an environmentalist that are looking to recruit Black community into such work, then you need to go meet with that Black community or that Indigenous community or that Hispanic community within that local area to talk about what are your priorities. And when you hear the word environment, what does it mean to you? Everybody's not thinking about a tree when it comes to the environment. If you go to Southwest Detroit, you got to drive through a whole bunch of refinery plant and the whole stench of sulfur just to get to the epicenter of Detroit. There are people living in that and smelling that air and that pollution all day long. For them, talking about saving the trees and the forest and the water, that is far and in between the air quality issues that are happening within Southwest Detroit, I would argue. So you want to get them involved in these larger environmental issues, then you also want to address the issues that are happening with them that are directly impacting their lives. And as an activist, you need to know what does that look like in that community? Is it impacting the water quality as well as the air that they're breathing? Two essential things that are impacting the quality of life of the people who live in Southwest Detroit. And it's not just Black people who live in Southwest Detroit. It's Black people, it's brown people, it's working class and poor white people. When you start thinking on that level, then it becomes this larger conversation. And all those constituencies need to be at the table to discuss and be a part of the strategy so that they become stable. And that's why wisdom practitioners are key to be able to identify them and connect with them to be able to engage that work in an authentic way with that community, whatever that work may be. Wisdom practitioners are individualistic repositories of knowledge. Um, any elder in a community that's been engaged, that has that knowledge, they are repositories of knowledge. And more than likely, it's more oral than it is written down on paper. It's important to document those stories so that when those people move on, those stories don't transition with social media gives us a better way to be able to capture that, but we need to do a better job of capturing more of those stories. Community wisdom provides a tool to do that, and I was able to do that through my research to get my master's degree in social justice, which was on this issue of community wisdom in Black queer communities. So another repository for knowledge for community wisdom is sociocultural institutions and cultural events and activities. When sociocultural institutions form that represent a community, we need to make sure that we support those institutions. Yeah, I know we get into a lot of issues with a lot of egos. There are a lot of personalities that get engaged when you get down to the local level. As activists, we need to find a way to work through that because having institutions that represent us is a part of what's needed to advance the work. And we need to have individuals that are repositories of that knowledge that can help define the strategies to improve the quality of life within community. But we also need formalized institutions that can, as an organization, carry some of that knowledge forward as well. And we need cultural activities and cultural events, which also are repositories of community wisdom that can advance that knowledge forward as well. So we don't have to think about library or archives that are formal archival systems to hold that knowledge. We actually have these living, breathing, organized systems to be able to do that and to share that knowledge with those that are coming after us. Well, case in point, Hotter Than July. Back in 1996, when we founded Hotter Than July, other people in the community connected with it and knew it. I was just the slow one. I was too busy trying to come out, be an organizer, and advance the work as a project. And I had it all intertwined in my head. And to me, Hotter Than July just blossomed out of nowhere. For those of you who don't know, Hotter Than July is the branded name for the Black LGBT Pride celebration in Detroit that's happening for um, the last 25, almost 30 years now. There'll be links in the narrative below for you to click to find it. You can also visit my website, geobax.com, to find out more information about hotterthanjuly.org. You can go there, and LGBT Detroit is currently the producer of Hotter Than July. LGBT Detroit is a sociocultural institution that's actually been in existence in different forms for over 30 years. Hotter Than July has been produced and organized by different entities and individuals for the last 25 years. So the community in Detroit has kept it going. So Hotter Than July is that cultural event that happens annually that keeps the community connected and holds certain knowledge as a result of that. BT Detroit, as well as many other sociocultural institutions, religious institutions, social groups, organizations, kinship networks, all of those have ownership Hotter Than July as a cultural event, but all those organizations and groups hold their own organizational, institutional knowledge of their existence in Detroit. Wisdom practitioners, when you gather knowledge from those wisdom practitioners, you can actually delve into decades of knowledge that you won't find documented in the books or even in local newspapers. Even though I thought a particular way in 1996 about Hotter Than July and its formation, through my research using qualitative research methodologies and formalizing community wisdom as a tool to be able to do that work, I found that a lot of Hotter Than July was grounded in the organizing work around Black gay men's health, around HIV and AIDS in the 80s, in the early 80s and the 70s. There were Black lesbian and Black male organizers that were working in the queer movement and socializing in queer clubs that had identified the need for safe spaces for Black queer people because they had to endure racism with clubs. All isms that exist in the world exist within LGBT community. Racism, misogyny, all of that. Probably make an argument that it's even more intensified within these smaller, fragmented sub communities within the small community of LGBT queerness already. So y'all get annoyed that there's so many different letters, but all those letters, LGBTQIA plus and so forth, and there's probably more to come. There's a reason that those letters exist. And instead of judging, I recommend learning more about the nuances and the things that make each of those identities necessary and why they have to have their own guidelines and frameworks in which they operate to advance their causes, to be recognized, to be heard, to be visible, to be seen. All of us deserve to be visible, seen, and heard. All of us deserve a seat at the table. So let me get off of that soapbox real quick. And yeah, all of that ties into repositories of knowledge, sociocultural institutions, wisdom practitioners, and cultural events and activities.
Why do radical possibilities matter?
So, what are the radical possibilities for community wisdom and Black people in the United States, the African diaspora, and beyond? This is a big question, and this is a big question that I would love us to have more engagement and conversation about, because part of the work I want to advance with Soul Shift is dismantling global anti-blackness. And my theory is to do that, we have to add value back to blackness. We have to cultivate blackness like it's soil and really love on it and appreciate it and give it some attention so that we can continue to grow this rich history, this rich era of radical possibilities and turn them into radical promises for the here and now and into the future, and are also connecting with the past, right? Because the past is always a part of who we are right now and defines how we're going to move forward into the future. So I'm thinking about Soul Shift from a diasporic perspective for Black people, formerly enslaved Black people, Africans from the motherland, the whole African diaspora. I want to advocate for African diasporic solidarity and unapologetic Black. Because at the end of the day, Black queer people, we are more interested in our Blackness than we are our queerness. We are much more interested in Black solidarity and being seen as equals in that space, more so than we are about holding on to our identity as queer. We are a part of a specific village, and we experience life differently than the rest of queerness. And we recognize that our priority is to be unapologetically Black. And that's what I got from my research in Black queer community in Detroit. And I would argue that work that's been happening in Detroit from a researcher standpoint is, I call it Black queer world making. It's something that we just had to do, creating safe space for other Black queer people in Detroit. What if those strategies that have served Detroit's Black queer community so well was transposed on the entire African diaspora and used to cultivate Blackness locally in communities across Black communities across the globe, in the global South, in the motherland, here in North America, continue to do it here in the United States? Then it's just a matter of, if the work is happening in all of these areas, then how do we bring them all together to coalesce Blackness on a global level, so that then dismantling anti-Blackness is about us and it's rooted in us, as opposed to try to convince others not to transpose their hate and their biases and their discrimination upon us and their superiority upon us as human beings. I think that's where we shine. I think we shine in that space, and we do it from a place of grace, spirituality, Black radical love, all of those things. Those are radical possibilities for Black solidarity, love, and liberation that I'm seeking through this podcast and the community that Soul Shift and Soul Shifting I expect to be about create. Got some call to actions we're going to do that I'm going to work to do after every episode, because I am an activist at the end of the day. And while it's cute for y'all to just sit here and maybe just listen to Johnny's voice, because I hear that it's very calming and poetic sometimes, I'm still going to give y'all stuff to do and give myself stuff to do as well, because it is a journey. And I want to continue growing and learning. And I want y'all to engage me to help in that process. And I want to be a part of y'all's growth and journey as well. And hopefully we bring that together and we could be a small part of getting to that end that I just mentioned, right? Unapologetic Blackness and solidarity, and working in community with others as well. Coalition building is key to this work. So this podcast is by no means simply for Black people. It's for everybody who love Black people and love Blackness and want to be invested in cultivating it. That's it. It's just that simple.
Soul shifting call to actions.
I want y'all to, first, assess your own role and identity as a wisdom practitioner in the community that you serve or represent. 2, identify 1 to 3 wisdom practitioners embedded in the core tenets of your work. After you identify them, invite them to a dinner, coffee, tea. Ask about their story. be present in the moment, right? And then after you do all of that, take some time to reflect upon what you've learned after the interview. Go back to this episode and take back in what you learned about community wisdom and the radical possibilities that can come from it. And then reflect on, how does your work align with their story? It may not align at all. More than likely, there's a lot of alignment that you probably weren't aware. I think that's worth reflecting on and using it as a learning opportunity to bring into the work as an activist, wisdom practitioner, as the leader of an organization, into how you are working to be the change maker in the community that you serve. So, but that's it. That's the episode on community wisdom, introducing y'all to soul shift, transforming radical possibilities, and the active verb of soul shifting. Those are the things we'll be cultivating in this space. Now that we're at the end of this, let me remind you that y'all learned a lot in this episode around community wisdom. So now you can contextualize it and you can actually use it as a tool to improve and enhance what you're doing in community. I invite y'all to like and follow the show and the social media channels. Y'all can follow all those links below. Visit the website is community-wisdom.org for more information about my research. You can take a look at my thesis paper that was submitted for my degree. I put it up there in its totality. I'm very proud of it and I want to get it out there. So please take a look at it. If you decide to use it, please cite it appropriately. I would appreciate it. And also, there's also a little bit of some download information about how to interline information, put everything in context. Pretty soon, you'll be able to join our Patreon community for extended conversations and discussion. And the next episode, we're going to go light because all I have to do is say Prince's birthday is June the 7th. We're going to focus in on Prince a little bit. Then after that, we'll talk about Juneteenth. So y'all definitely going to want to stay with us as this podcast gets further refined and I get refined as your host and we grow together. I'm also a part of the poetry community in Detroit. I produce poetry set for at least a couple of decades on the Echoverse. I also worked with Clema Johnson on Thick Nap Poetry Series and produced Detroit Slam teams for a couple of years. So I'm going to invite some of my poet friends up in this space and some visual artists as well. There's going to be a lot of mixtures of people and cultures and identities up in this space. And I welcome everybody to engage and to be a part of it. So with no further ado, I want to thank y'all for being here and I'll see you next week. Oh, we're going to work on dropping episodes every Wednesday. 10 episodes each quarter. A whole season is going to be 40 episodes. So stick with us. We're going to get this thing refined and each episode will get better and better. Visit soulshiftpodcast.com for additional information about the episodes and for upcoming special events. We'll be doing some of those as well. And if you want to learn more about Geoba X, you can visit www.geobax.com to learn more about my mission, my journey, and what I'm doing. Peace and blessings, everybody. I look forward to seeing y'all next week.